this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
The big game commercials are basically must-see TV. This year, Elf Cosmetics went all out with an absurdly funny telenovela called Melissa. It stars Melissa McCarthy, Nicholas Gonzalez, Itati Cantoral, and Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil. The Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil is an ultra-glossy tinted lip oil that nourishes, hydrates, and enhances your lips' natural color.
Watch the full episode of their new Elf novela on soyunbaño.com.
Ever wonder why so many people regain weight after stopping a GLP-1? Up to 40% of the weight lost can come from lean muscle. This weakens the body, slows metabolism, and makes it easier to put the pounds back on, creating a cycle of dependency. Prolon's 5-day fasting-mimicking diet offers a drug-free way to maintain results and support long-term metabolic health. In just 5 days, it activates fasting pathways to burn fat, protect muscle, and rejuvenate cells, all while letting you enjoy real food. Get 15% off plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe at prolonlife.com/iHeart. That's prolonlife.com/iHeart.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. Coldwater Creek's authenticity is embodied in every piece, embracing its confident spirit that carries through to today. Discover Coldwater Creek clothing, designed to fit your life the way you want. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
Welcome to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson, along with our house DJ, Tolliver. And Tolliver, have you been watching The White Lotus?
I think we both know I've been watching The White Lotus,
Right,
and I'm waiting
right.
for us to do a show on it.
Well, I don't think that's going to happen. But for people who have not been watching it, Parker Posey's character has had some moments that have gone viral online, including this one that sets us up perfectly for today's show.
When have you taken my lorazepams?
No, ma'am.
No. I just had my prescription filled and I could tell some are missing.
You don't have enough lorazepam to get through 1 week at a wellness spa?
Okay, so lorazepam is an anti-anxiety medication along with brand names like Xanax and Valium. It's part of a class of drugs called benzodiazepines, or benzos for short. And those are on Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s list of drugs he thinks Americans are taking too many of.
15% of American youth are now on Adderall or some other ADHD medication. Even higher percentages are on SSRIs and benzos. We are not just over-medicating our children, we're over-medicating our entire population.
So that's what we're going to be asking you about this hour. Do you think America is over-medicated? And just to be clear, we are not talking about vaccines here. We're talking about prescription drugs for conditions including anxiety, depression, weight loss, and ADHD. And we're going to get to that in a moment and your calls. But first, last week on the show, we talked about what the future of American energy should look like. We got a lot of calls, a lot of nuance from our listeners. Here are some of the voicemails that came in after the show.
Hey, my name is Bill from Chicago. I'm solidly in the middle. I voted for Democrats and Republicans. If we're going to be real and not disingenuous, suggesting that the middle so embraces wind and solar, given the actual underlying statistics, is ridiculous.
This is Tina Brazil calling from Salida, Colorado. I consider myself a pretty progressive person in support of clean energy, but there's not really a switch that we can turn on to go all renewable. It's going to happen over time, and it's better to have that diversity until we can go completely clean.
Douglas Scharnberg calling from Interlingua, Texas. The bottom line is Americans need to stop being spoon-fed their energy like babies. Where you plug in, you get carte blanche, as much electricity as you could possibly use. There's absolutely no incentive for conservation with this model.
Well, thanks to everyone who called in. You can hear that entire episode on our podcast in partnership with iHeart Podcasts on the iHeart app or wherever you listen to podcasts. So now to our topic this hour. Is America over-medicated? Tolliver, the phone number, please.
Yeah, it's 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. You can also write to us at listentothemiddle.com, and you can also comment on our live stream on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitch.
Joining us on the panel this hour, KFF Health News Chief Washington Correspondent Julie Rovner. Julie, great to have you on the middle.
Great to be here, Jeremy.
And Daniel Grossman joins us as well. He's an emergency medicine physician at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, and has held a number of business leadership roles in the healthcare industry. Daniel, welcome to you.
Thanks. Great to be here.
So before we get to the phones, Julie, I want to be clear. As I said, we are talking about prescription drugs and not vaccines. RFK Jr., the health secretary, has been skeptical of both. But on the issue of prescription drugs, there is a Penn State study that found in the mid-90s, most Americans were on one prescription drug. Now, people taking prescription meds are just as likely to be on 5 or more. How do you explain that?
There are more drugs for more things. I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing. There are a lot of things that we can control now using prescription drugs that we couldn't in the 90s. And some of them are just, or we could, but now we have better drugs. People have high blood pressure and diabetes and all the chronic diseases that RFK Jr. says he is so concerned about. So I think that's kind of not a fair way to decide whether Americans are over-medicated by the fact that they're simply taking more prescription drugs.
Daniel, what do you think? And I'll throw in another stat. The Congressional Budget Office found that nationwide spending on prescription drugs jumped tenfold from 1980 to 2018. That's adjusted for inflation. What is your experience as a doctor? Are people taking more medications now? And if so, why?
Yeah, I think you have to go back a level and say, are there more diseases? Do people have, is the prevalence of disease greater? Yes. Is the incidence, are we seeing more and more new types of diseases? Yes, because we can diagnose things. And honestly, the rate of discovery of new drugs has accelerated greatly. And so all of those things combined tell us that there are going to be more people taking more medications.
You're saying that we can diagnose more diseases, and that's why it's not that we're becoming sicker.
That's true. Well, I would say we are becoming sicker, and we can diagnose diseases that we couldn't diagnose before. They can both be true.
Do you feel pressure from patients or from pharmaceutical companies, for that matter, to prescribe medications?
Definitely from patients. I'm held outside of sort of influence of pharmaceutical companies in our practice environment. But patients, when they come to our emergency department or see physicians, they expect something to be done. And so you have to figure out what that something is going to be. And that can be a difficult conversation with patients.
It's hard to say no to the patients?
It's hard to say no. It's hard to meet expectations. You have to suss out what the expectations are. And many of them come with a goal that they would like met. And that may be a medication prescription.
Julie Rovner, what could the Trump administration do if they wanted to get people to be taking less prescription medications? What kind of tools do they have?
Well, of course, the biggest tool is obviously the bully pulpit. And we do, know that there is a lot. People do listen to federal health officials. They may not trust them as much as they used to before the pandemic, but they do listen to them. We have a brand new head of the FDA, Marty Makary, who the Senate just confirmed this week, a fairly prominent surgeon from Johns Hopkins who's written several books and is good on TV, as most of the people in the Trump administration are. He's been trying to walk kind of a fine line between what RFK Jr. wants, but and what he believes, and he hasn't really said, but he could obviously, provide a lot of sway if he wanted to. We'll see whether he does or not.
The phone lines are lighting up, so let's get to a caller. Magdalena is calling from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Magdalena, what do you think? Is America over-medicated?
I absolutely don't think so. I think that we as Americans are lucky enough to have access to these kinds of medications that really for me personally, have enabled me to have a better quality of life. I have been diagnosed with dysthymic disorder, which is basically a chronic depression where I have always had a low level of depression because my brain just doesn't produce enough serotonin or dopamine. And now at 50 years old, I've learned the symptoms that I am familiar with, the symptoms that I experience because of my disorder. And if I didn't have access to the medications that I have access to, I don't think that I would have been as successful in my life and been able to be as productive in my life because I didn't have access to them.
Do you worry, Magdalena, that some of the rhetoric coming out of the Trump administration, that you may not have access to that, or you just think that they're sort of talking about a big picture thing, but it won't have an effect on you?
I'm worried that it's rhetoric and that people already have a hard time understanding how medications work, whether they're medications for depression or antipsychotic medications or anti-anxiety medications. I'm personally a social worker, so I've seen this throughout my career, and I think that this will just continue to add to the confusion to people and make it difficult for people to understand how medications work and, that you have to take them a certain way and one thing isn't going to work for everybody. So when I hear, this rhetoric that we're over medicated, it's only because we're in the richest country in the world and we have access to them.
Yeah, Magdalena, thank you so much for that call. Daniel Grossman, what do you think of that? And I wonder also, if people are taken off medications, they decide not to take the medications because of what's being talked about in Washington, could it lead to a mental health crisis in this country?
Well, let's start with we already have a mental health crisis in this country. We have a significant challenge with mental health. There are not enough mental health providers. There are deserts where people don't have access to it. What Magdalena described is essentially what a lot of people have discovered, which is their bodies might not quite work correctly, and one person's not correctly is different than another person's not correctly. And our ability to provide medications and increasingly to use science to figure out the nuances of what will work for one person versus another person is pretty remarkable. So, what she's describing, we have the ability in this country to offer and to help, as she said, lead a more productive life.
Speaking of Julie Rovner, there's news just today about 10,000 job cuts at the Department of Health and Human Services. Would that affect the department's ability to do anything about over-medication if they believe that that's a priority?
Well, this is an enormous restructuring, basically, of the entire Department of Health and Human Services. It includes cuts of 3,500 people to the FDA. The fact sheet that the department distributed says that it won't affect the people who are actually reviewing drugs. Those are mostly not paid for with federal funds anyway. They're paid for with user fees that are provided by the drug companies themselves. But it's hard to know exactly how this worry or, how they would try to operationalize getting people off of too many drugs.
Tolliver, we can't have this discussion without mentioning the tens of billions of dollars that pharmaceutical companies and retailers have had to pay to settle lawsuits related to prescription opioids like OxyContin.
Yeah, actually, just this year, a bipartisan coalition of states reached a $7.4 billion settlement with OxyContin maker Purdue Pharma and the Sackler family for their role in the opioid epidemic. Here's one of the attorneys general involved in the settlement, New York's Letitia James.
The Sackler family and their company Purdue, who helped spark the opioid crisis decades ago, have for years avoided accountability for the immense cause that they have caused. All of the victims, all of the loved ones who have died, all of those who are in the throes of addiction right now. But that ends today.
This latest settlement, by the way, replaces one that the Supreme Court rejected last year. And we'll be right back with more of The Middle.
Olympics. You'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan, tonight 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. Coldwater Creek's authenticity is embodied in every piece, embracing its confident spirit that carries through to today. Discover Coldwater Creek clothing, designed to fit your life the way you want. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, Ryder, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here and my wife.
Boom, boom. This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. If you're just tuning in, The Middle is a national call-in show. We're focused on elevating voices from the middle, geographically, politically, and philosophically, or maybe you just want to meet in the middle. This hour, we're asking you, is America over-medicated? Tolliver, what is the number to call in?
It's 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. You can also write to us at listentothemiddle.com or on social media.
I'm joined by Daniel Grossman, emergency medicine physician at the Mayo Clinic, and KFF Health News chief Washington correspondent Julie Rovner. And before we go back to the phones, Julie, we heard a moment ago about the settlements against Big Pharma. How much pushback are you seeing, or would you expect, from the pharmaceutical companies when it comes to reducing the amount of prescription drugs that Americans are on?
Well, obviously, pharma has a financial interest in Americans getting and continuing to take prescription drugs. The opioid epidemic was kind of separate and for many of them. But there is a problem with drug companies being incentivized to make not necessarily the drugs that people most need, but the drugs that they're going to make the most money from. I mean, we have a huge shortage now of antibiotics, of new antibiotics coming into the pipeline because people don't have to take antibiotics for the rest of their lives the way they take, statins for cholesterol or drugs for blood pressure. So it does better if you're a drug company to make something that people are going to take forever. before.
It's like a wedding planner. You don't really go back for don't go back for seconds. They don't need to repeat business.
Hopefully,
on an antibiotic. Right.
You hope not.
You hope
but
not.
I mean, you could argue that we have that we're under-drugged in some ways because people often can't afford drugs that they need. So it does cut both ways.
Daniel, how do you balance the incredible advances that we've made in medicine that you talked about that allow us to treat so many things with prescription drugs with not wanting to overprescribe and get people addicted as they did during the opioid crisis?
The idea that a prescription from an emergency department or from a single physician is going to be addictive has been debunked. But the challenge is that there's a thought from the general population that if you take a medication, you will get addicted to it. So it actually has removed some tools because patients are reluctant to use the medications that we have available because they are afraid, because they have become afraid over time of becoming addicted. So our advancements are really in these some of the larger disease populations that don't have risk for addiction, or new discoveries like Alzheimer's disease medications are coming out. There's not a risk of addiction there. Mm-hmm. We have a new tool to help people that we didn't have before. We need to find ways to take advantage of those as opposed to saying that we are over-medicated.
Let's go to Connor, who's in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Hi, Connor. Welcome to The Middle. Go ahead.
Hi, great to be on. So I've been taking basically a AD medication for about 20 years. I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was about 9. I've had to be off of it for periods just due to insurance, and it has a just net negative all my life when I'm not on the prescription, and just really deeply worried by the discourse around RFK Jr. And kind of what that will do for me being a student and being a professional. So that's kind of my idea.
Do you think that RFK Jr. will make it impossible for you to get your ADHD medication, or why does the rhetoric worry you specifically?
I have heard just the way that he talks about ADHD medications and SSRIs. I don't know exactly what, I am in public health, so I don't really know exactly what will happen, but as we've seen with this administration, things can kind of change in a second. So I just kind of worried about the discourse around that. Not exactly sure how it would happen, but just kind of, a little worried.
Yeah, Connor, thank you for that call. Let me go to another. Brent is calling from Jackson, Wyoming. Hi, Brent. Welcome to The Middle. Go ahead with your thoughts.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm a senior aviation medical examiner, and I think that people forget that when children are put on ADHD medication, especially inappropriately, or other psychotropic medicines, whether they're antidepressants or tranquilizers, and they really don't need them, that can affect their careers. They can't become a pilot many times. They can't get into the military academies. And with the electronic medical record, this stuff stays with somebody their entire life. So it's hard to undo a misdiagnosis or inappropriately treated child. So I think that's an important thing to remember.
So what do you say to our previous caller, Connor, who said, that when he has to go off of his ADHD medication, it has a really negative impact on his life?
Well, I think people who are properly diagnosed, they do definitely need medications like the ADHD medications. But those people go through an extensive evaluation. It's not a 30-minute appointment with a primary care doctor or a primary care provider. It's a full day of examination, usually with a neuropsychologist or a psychiatrist, to really make a definitive diagnosis. You can't just, these medicines get thrown around so much that there are a lot of people on these medications that really don't need to be on them and never should have been on them.
Brent, thank you for that call.
Hey.
Julie Rovner, two very different views there on that issue just of ADHD medications.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the same is true. Most medications can be used properly and can be used improperly. I mean, people are not out there, I don't think, abusing their blood pressure drugs for the most part. There's a lot of drugs that are not really subject to abuse, and that's a whole different discussion. But of the ones that can be, or that somebody can make money from basically, pressing people
Right.
to take. Although generally doctors don't make money when people take prescriptions, but there are a lot of people who, will try to sort of keep patients coming back by giving them drugs. And obviously, I think the opioids were a little bit of a one-off, but I think one of the big problems that we had with the opioids is that the drug company lied about how addictive they were. And I think that legitimately now has people kind of freaked out about drugs, particularly about painkillers.
Julie,
Tolliver,
I actually have
some
a quick
comments coming in
question.
online, yeah.
Yeah, well, I have a personal one, if that's okay. So I saw an ad today are you familiar with hers.com or hims.com? These apps basically where you can order your prescriptions after just like a virtual appointment or some just text. What do you think about those? Are they harmful or not? What do you think?
I think they are lightly regulated. Let's put it that way. I think I would like to know what the doctor thinks about that.
Daniel?
While they are lightly regulated and they have, these are companies that have often venture-backed financial models and need to show growth, and they've pivoted to sort of meet some of the emerging areas where there are prescription opportunities. They have also expanded access to people who might not have access for things because of the virtual models, because of the decentralization. You can actually get more patients into the system, and that's a really good thing. So I would look at it that way.
Matthew is calling from Minot, North Dakota. Matthew, welcome to the middle. Do you think America is over-medicated?
Hi, guys. I just want to kind of synthesize what your last two callers said. I've been on these medications, benzos and amphetamines, for about 20 years, and I think there's a whole generation of us now, people my age, who were put on them early when they were in the school by their parents or psychologists or whatever. We grew up taking them, and now we're dependent on them, and I'm worried that this will kind of demonize those medications for those of us who, at this point, can't function without them, and we just need them for maintenance. I recently came to North Dakota from a different state, and to get a prescription up here, they asked me to redo ADD testing. But the fact is, whether I actually have it or not now, it's irrelevant. I need the medication to function just because some of us have been on it so long, whether we chose that or not.
Do you feel like you wish you had not been put on it in the first place, or do you think about that?
I consistently think it was the worst thing that ever happened to me.
Wow. What do you think your life would be like if you had not been? Now, obviously, a doctor at some point decided that was a good idea.
Sure. And I mean, I can't speculate. But I do know it's not as simple as, well, why don't you just stop taking it after you've been on them for 30 years just because of the nature of the drugs? It really is necessary to function after a certain point, and that's hard to articulate in a way to newer medical professionals because they don't understand the history, what it was like 20 years ago when doctors first started giving Ritalin to everybody.
Matthew, thank you for that call. Daniel Grossman, your thoughts on that? Very interesting.
Yeah, that's a very compelling personal story. I would have to agree with his perspective on what's been happening for many, many years. Our prior caller who talked about the impact on getting jobs, the larger issue there might actually be the stigma that's attached to these medications and that it impacts employment in some areas. In some it might, but we could destigmatize these. The other thing to keep in mind is that the robustness of the diagnostic process that leads to people being taking antidepressants or on ADHD medications, the robustness of that process has increased dramatically. Our ability to accurately diagnose patients is significantly better today than it was before. And so this idea that caller said that people are inappropriately put on them, I don't think that's the vast majority of patients now. And we should flip the script a little bit on why patients are taking them, how they got there, and what that means for them professionally.
Julie Rovner, go ahead, Tolliver.
So sorry. We're going to get this together one day. I've got a bunch of comments coming in online. About 90% of them about ADHD, but I want to get some in. Luke in Milwaukee says the MAGA movement is very harmful to ADHD and autistic people, and I myself am both an ADHDer and autistic. It's important for those with ADHD to be able to have our medications, as well as people with depression like myself who need SSRIs. And then let's see. Catherine in Kansas City says, is America overmedicated? Yes, American medical care is more algorithmic, business-based, consumer satisfaction-based, and less patient-centered and health-promoting. This is slowly changing, but we are still decades behind where we could be, and decades of life and health have been lost because of it. That was a very prescient comment.
Julie Rovner, interesting there, just comparing the American medical system to other countries. Robert F. Kennedy would say we spend, and rightfully so, we spend way more money on healthcare, and part of that is prescription drugs. A big part of that is prescription drugs than many other countries do.
That's because our healthcare system is much more expensive than most other countries. It's not that we take more, that we're sicker. It's that we pay more for what it is that we get. This is obviously a very difficult and sensitive issue for an awful lot of people. And as I say, there's a lot of people who could be taking prescription drugs, who should be taking prescription drugs, and who aren't because they can't afford them, because we pay more for our prescription drugs in the United States than any other country in the world, even though most of the drug companies are U.S. companies.
Megan is calling from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Hi, Megan. Welcome to The Middle. Go ahead with your thoughts.
Hi, welcome, and thanks for having me, and thanks for having this discussion. I think it's a really important one, and I'm the mother of, my son is now 22, but he had been medicated starting at a really young age. It was like third grade where they wanted to introduce ADHD meds, and so I've seen the effects of these psychotropic and sort of methamphetamine drug use on a young child's brain. And I have a lot of concerns about it. I was a young mother at the time when I sort of took the lead of the experts. And now looking back on it, I wish I would have maybe tried some other things before. But I see it's a pretty big trend where these young children are put on these heavy medications. And then now we have this mental health crisis, and we have a lot of addiction issues running wild in our country. And I think it can stem back to having been overly medicated at young ages, and those little brains just can't handle all that stuff. You know, it seems like it might help solve things, but I think there's other ways to do it, and that should be the first thought for young children.
How does your child feel about it now that your child is an adult?
He's actually really angry and has a lot of thoughts about having not given consent to this, and he struggles with addiction now, and so he feels kind of like he had no choice, and now he's kind of like one of the last callers, like, when you've been on these things for your life, then suddenly you're stuck on it, right? You have no other way to do things, and you're used to functioning with these medications, and so life without them is challenging. And I know there's a lot of times issues with shortages, and so one of the meds my son takes is often not even available, so he's forced then to sort of self-medicate and do other things to get by. So it's challenging.
Great points, Megan. Thank you very much. Daniel Grossman, well, actually, there are two things in there, but one of them is she just said he self-medicates because he can't get what he needs. Are you seeing shortages of medications because of overuse in some cases?
I don't think, I don't know a specific answer to that, whether it's from overuse or because we consolidate the number of manufacturers. There are plants that have problems. There's a natural disaster that takes out a major manufacturer of things like IV fluid. That happens now, and so that is probably a larger contributor to shortages of medications than an overuse problem.
Mm-hmm.
We have supply chain issues with medications.
Right.
That's mostly what's causing shortages.
Yeah. Let me sneak in one more call here before we have to take a quick break. Stephanie's in Longmont, Colorado. Hi, Stephanie. Go ahead.
Hi, guys. Absolutely, I do agree that the opioid crisis was definitely a problem. But I kind of wanted to just get the opinion on, do we think that currently the state of being over-medicated is really and truly being over-medicated? Or do you think it's potentially a product of the poor health of Americans, the bad diets and things like that, and then also a mix of, the just acceptance of mental health, and people being more willing to seek out treatment, being more willing to kind of go seek those medications, and that kind of stigma going down, and just a combination of those things making it seem like we're overly medicated.
Stephanie, I'll take that to Julie Rovner.
Well, I think Dr. Grossman said it early on. It's a combination of there's more things we can do and more things that we can diagnose. And yes, are there people who are inappropriately getting medication? Clearly. Are there people who are not getting medication who should? Also clearly. I mean, it's a really hard problem. We don't have it goes back to sort of the mess that our nation's healthcare system is in which we don't really have a healthcare system. So some people have better access to care than others. Some people have access to care that maybe not with the best providers. And so we end up with people in different situations.
And Julie, the Trump administration, there was a first Trump administration, and they did not focus on this issue really at all.
Well, they focused on Trump was actually very much into drug prices in the first administration and very much trying to get drug prices down, including by some ways that courts said, no, you can't, like trying to, price drugs the same as they are in Europe, which obviously the drug makers all sued. And, now they're still the question is whether we're even going to continue this very small program that we have to negotiate drug prices for Medicare. It does look like that's going to continue. But, this has been hand-to-hand combat with the drug industry over a lot of years.
Well, Tolliver, long before Parker Posey in The White Lotus, there was a character played by Sherry O'Terry on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, her name was Colette Reardon, and in addition to uneven lipstick and eyeshadow, we've all been there, she had no shortage of prescription drugs. Here's a clip from 1999.
Oh, seriously, I'm legitimately troubled by the amount of medication on this table.
Me too. Well, the second all here is for the night sweats and hot flashes I get, what with being premenopausal.
Listen, I better fix your phone here, all right?
Well, fix it quick, Rich. I got to call Dr. Doug Bevilacqua, my ENT, and sometimes why?
Why?
Well, because I need a refill on the Dilaudid I take for my carpal tunnel syndrome.
Dr. Bevilacqua? How do you pronounce that?
Bevilacqua. And she has different names for all the doctors. By the way, I had a lot of fun going through all the clips that we could have used for that with Sherry O'Terry. The problem was that most of them ended up having her swearing at some point.
We can bleep that out.
Well, on the podcast, we wouldn't have to, but on the radio show, we do. We'll be right back with more of your calls on The Middle.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. Coldwater Creek's authenticity is embodied in every piece, embracing its confident spirit that carries through to today. Discover Coldwater Creek clothing, designed to fit your life the way you want. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, right, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here and my wife. Boom, boom.
This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson, and this hour we're asking you, is America over-medicated? You can call us at 844-4MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. Or you can reach out at listentothemiddle.com. My guests are KFF Health News Chief Washington Correspondent Julie Rovner and Daniel Grossman, an emergency medicine physician at the Mayo Clinic. And before we go back to the phones, Julie, even if Americans on different sides of the political spectrum, we don't know the political views of the callers that have called in so far, but even if people on both sides were to agree that we are over-medicated, the messenger here is Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who, as we mentioned, is also skeptical of vaccines, even in the face of a deadly measles outbreak that is being fueled by unvaccinated children. Does he have credibility with the people that you speak with in the world of healthcare?
Not really. I mean, the MAHA movement, the Make America Healthy Again movement, consists of people who are legitimately skeptical of, some things, of people being over-medicated. But it's also made up of people who are selling supplements that have not been, the quote-unquote natural things that have not been evaluated and approved by the FDA, and that in some cases have been shown to be dangerous. So there's an awful lot of, I will resist the urge to say snake oil salesman, but there's an awful lot that's out there on the market that's not quote-unquote a drug that's also not very good for you.
Daniel, I'm not going to ask you that question because you're a doctor at the Mayo Clinic, and Julie can say things like that because she is a correspondent at KFF Health News. But I will ask you this. If you as a doctor were to snap your finger and say, I want to make America healthier, what would you do, and would fewer medications be anywhere on your list?
No, fewer medications wouldn't. It would be more providers, more physicians. It would be more mental health experts. It would be better access to medical care for our Native American populations. It would be better access to healthy foods and medical care for our Black and Hispanic populations. It would be infrastructural and systems issues. It's not a medication problem.
Let's go to Eli, who's calling from West Hartford, Connecticut. Hi, Eli. Welcome to The Middle, and go ahead.
Hi. Thank you for taking the call. I just wanted to – hold on. I apologize. I'm just pulling over here. I'm on the Bluetooth. Don't worry. So I just wanted to mention I actually went through a very part of this process for a very long period of time. I was taking high doses of Xanax for years and years and years, having been prescribed it in my teens. And I went through a highly difficult process of having to stop. And all of that was, I just wanted to mention, the kind of the confluence of all of this. I was stuck in that very, victim mentality. Everything is somebody else's fault. The anxiety is, I'm not supposed to be experiencing it, kind of like a cliche millennial male in that, just the world is supposed to be softened at my footsteps. And sorry, I'll super quick and finish really quickly, is that having stopped all that and, been, a responsible member of society, I've been able to, triple my income, find my fiance, buy a house in just 2 or 3 years of just experiencing life as it's supposed to be. Difficult. People experience depression. You experience anxiety. Get the hell over it. That's the way that life is supposed to be. And I'm for any type of movement that is supposed to perpetuate that, especially with young men. That is the way that things are supposed to be. It's supposed to be difficult. Get over yourselves.
Eli, thank you.
Can I present a counterpoint to that, please?
Yeah, go ahead.
I've had anxiety, serious anxiety, since I was 11. I'm now in my 60s. I, by the way, was one of the people who was part of the clinical trial for Xanax, which did not work very well for me. But I will say I'm now on an SSRI, and it has changed my life for the better. And I know a lot of people who are that way because, as the first caller, I think it was, said, when you have a chemical imbalance and you take something that balances your chemical imbalance, you feel like a normal person. So I think, yes, there's a lot of people who are on drugs who shouldn't be. These drugs are not all the same. You can be inappropriately, put on a drug that either does not work for you or that's not appropriate for you. But I think to make some of these blanket statements like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is making, that people are overdrugged, it's doing a serious disservice to people who take medications that they need.
You know, one class of drugs we haven't talked about this hour, surprisingly, that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has gone after is the GLP-1 drugs, Ozempic, Wegovy, et cetera. Daniel Grossman, do you have any different thoughts about those than you do about other medications?
I mean, isn't science amazing? We have been able to create a synthetic version of a natural peptide in the body that tells our body to eat less, or help with insulin regulation and sugar regulation, and also, so diabetes control, weight loss as a result also, and also will help with things like substance use disorder and alcohol use disorder. Like, this is phenomenal. We should avail ourselves of the resources that happen. We should avail ourselves of our mental health providers, SSRIs, GLP-1 agonists. Like, this is amazing, and we have access to these things to make us healthier as a result.
Bill is calling from Chelmsford, Massachusetts. Hi, Bill. Welcome to The Middle. What are your thoughts?
Hey, everyone. Thank you for taking my call. I don't think we're over-medicated. I think we're under-supported. I think that you see the doctor initially and they give you a drug to help. There's no follow-up as much as there should be. But here's my question also. There's an awful lot of stress and concern with the administration and our government today, and there's an awful lot of people who are in need, who don't have the resources. And if RFK is successful in denying even more support to them in the way of whether it be medication or doctors or social work, what happens to these people who turn from that support or even the medication they need or find help with and turn to things like alcohol or marijuana or other sources where you can't even track it? And at least with medication, hopefully there's some kind of system and follow-up with doctors. And I know the general question, are we over-medicated, is so broad. There's so many different areas that maybe we're over-medicated in one, but we're not in others, and maybe we need more medication in even others. But I think, unfortunately, the people who are going to suffer are the ones that need the support from the government, and if RFK has his way, they're not going to get it. And I'm concerned about that. I'm wondering what your panel thinks.
Yeah. Thank you, Bill. Either of you want to get into that about whether if people don't get the medication they need for things like stress and depression, they may turn to other drugs, including alcohol?
People have been self-medicating since there were people. I mean, we know this from, anthropological digs. We see it in sort of tribes that are in the middle of the Amazon, the things that people have availed themselves of to deal with stress and anxiety. And yes, it is part of the human condition, but it's also, trying to deal with it is something that humans have always done, and I suspect will always do. It's a lot safer, I think, to take drugs in most cases than it is to do some of these other things.
Let's get to Gretchen, who's in beautiful Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Hi, Gretchen. Welcome to The Middle. What do you think?
Well, I think we're very, very over-medicated in this country. I've been told that only in the U.S. and New Zealand is it legal for drugs to be advertised on TV. And many of the drugs advertised say, ask your doctor about this, that, or the other drug. And I think it's such a big business that it's really running our country in several ways, as is the automotive industry. But if you watch TV for just a few hours, every other ad on TV is about pharmaceuticals with multiple deadly side effects. Mm-hmm. I think it's a big business that's running our country in many, many ways.
Yeah,
that's on every 10 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I had a former colleague who didn't want her kid to be marketed to, and so she only let him watch PBS and the Food Channel, because the Food Channel she thought would only market to adults. And one night he said to her, "Mommy, I can't sleep. Can I have a Lunesta?" Like 6 years old. But what about that, Daniel Grossman, just the advertising on television for all these drugs and just the big business that it is?
It's a big business. This is it both helps feed discovery of these and is a marketing machine, right? And so patients do come into physicians and ask for medications by name. That is how marketing works. And the only way to stop that is, of course, is to remove all pharmaceutical marketing, which is not going to happen. So it becomes inherent to the physicians and the patients and to develop a relationship of trust to guide for or away for those medications.
And the caller is exactly correct that the U.S. and New Zealand are the only countries that allow the kinds of drug advertising that we have. That, you know,
Funny
for a long
pairing.
time,
I wouldn't have
drugs
thought
were
New Zealand
advertised
would be-
in medical journals.
Yeah.
And, you know, they were advertised to doctors, but not directly to patients. And I think that is one of the things that RFK Jr. talks about trying to scale back that I think there is bipartisan support for.
Cole is calling from Salt Lake City. Hi, Cole. Welcome to The Middle. Your thoughts?
Hey, how's it going? I first off want to thank the doctor in the room. What's his name?
Daniel Grossman.
Daniel, for his views. And, you know, I wish there was someone like him, you know, leading the healthcare in our country, and not, you know, not someone who maybe doesn't have as much scientific background and training. I think we really owe a lot to the centuries of science and research that's taken place in this country, and you know, all over the world. It's just amazing. As a little kid, I was diagnosed very quickly, I think in about a 30-minute session with my school counselor. She was pretty sure I had ADHD, and I went through some diagnostic testing, you know, for that, whatever, the 30-question test on a sheet of paper. And I did a trial of Adderall, and I had horrendous restless legs and night terrors, and I was hypervigilant, couldn't sleep. And 20 years later, I was still struggling with ADHD, and tried to, you know, become medicated again as an adult. And I actually had a manic break, that time around. And, you know, it's speculated now that I have, bipolar 2 disorder, which is kind of a murky, diagnosis. But, you know, I wouldn't ever criticize the doctors for trying to help me. I think that's what they were trying to do. I wasn't, however, warned of the potential psychotic effects of.
Oh, I think we lost Cole there.
Jeremy.
Yeah,
I had
go ahead,
actually
Tolliver.
a couple comments related to that. Also, first one to say, Julie, we love you too. Okay, I know the caller.
Yeah, Julie could easily be the head of the health.
Okay.
Yeah.
I put Julie in charge.
Okay, so someone says, it seems that a record number of people that I know are on antidepressant medications, yet the suicide rate is skyrocketing. I personally know 3 people who have had their medications adjusted and then took their own life. People seem to take these meds very lightly. John in Michigan says, are we over-medicated, or are we just aware of the world around us? People have always had depression, anxiety. But for 20 years now, we've been facing down flat wages, ridiculous house and rental prices, a work life with little to no time off, toxic work culture, people can't afford kids, healthcare out of reach, an inverse relationship between voter support and policies passed, environmental wreckage, crumbling infrastructure. I think you guys get the point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So, yeah.
and Julie, this gets to something that has come up a little bit in this hour, which is, you know, the idea that we're sicker and therefore we're dealing with more medications. Is it just that people now are, you know, being able to be diagnosed, as Dr. Grossman said earlier, with these things, and we're remembering a time that didn't really exist before?
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination, and absolutely, you know, yes, we have huge mental health problems right now, but partly it's because we're aware of them. We obviously had huge mental health problems throughout time immemorial, but we didn't know it as much as we do now. I think that's part of it, is that we're able to see things and, you know, and realize things, and plus we have remarkable drugs that can help. I mean, there's all kinds of, you know, science marches on and we discover new things. So, but you're right. I think we're thinking, you know, one of the reasons we have so much chronic disease is that people aren't dying of acute diseases anymore, is that things like vaccines have, you know, stop people mostly from dying from measles and mumps and chicken pox and other kinds of communicable diseases, because we figured out how to not have them spread, and therefore they're living to be older and ending up with some of the chronic ailments that you get as you age.
I'm going to sneak in. Yeah, go ahead, Daniel.
Julie, today people are more willing to say out loud that they're seeking therapy. They're seeing therapists. And that didn't used to happen. And so when more people say that, more people end up on medications, or it just destigmatizes getting help. And that's a great thing.
I'm going to sneak in one more call. Adam is in Houston, Texas. Hi, Adam. What do you think?
Great points, everything you guys are talking about tonight. I grew up kind of underprivileged, schizophrenic mom. Never had any psychiatric help. Always felt depressed. Finally got on an SSRI when I was like 27. So I dealt with self-medication as a teenager, doing the opiate crisis thing. One of our friends' moms used to give us OxyContin when we were like 13. So I was always averse to medication after I got off the opiates. So I didn't want to go on one, but I really needed it. It's really helped me out since then. And I'm in therapy now as well. So I just wanted to speak about that side of the coin.
And how old are you now?
For the people that it helped. 42.
42. Okay. Adam, thank you so much for that call. Really amazing calls this hour. So many people with very personal stories. And before we go, I do want to bring it to a personal story of one of our guests, Daniel Grossman, who many years ago, Daniel, I came to you in Rochester, Minnesota to do a story about you because you had been in an accident. You suffered a spinal cord injury. Our listeners can't see you, but you are in a wheelchair now, and you had gone back to work months after that spinal cord injury as an ER doctor at the Mayo Clinic, helping patients once again. It was just an amazing thing to see. And I wonder how that experience informs your views on what we've been talking about this hour.
Yeah, well, Jeremy, thanks for bringing that up. And our story then has continued to bring people forward. And, I get emails from folks who have found that and some of the videos from it and helps them get back to work. Listen, I take a bunch of medications. I am medicated because of my chronic illness. That is the reality of it. My life would be more difficult without those medications. I would be less well off and less able to function. And they're not the medications we're talking about today, but we're not just talking about those medications. We're talking about the 5 or 10 medications that many Americans are on and that help them. And so, I both have empathy as a patient. I have empathy for my patients as a physician. I look at their medication lists and I think about what the ramifications of some of those medications are. Are they safe? Are they dangerous? Could we change some things? I, as an emergency room doctor, am not the one to be changing them. But that's the healthcare infrastructure needs to get better at thinking about all of the medications because they're not going to go away. And there's the opportunity for improvement is let's embrace the things we have, get better at optimizing them for people and continue to live the best lives we can.
Well, I want to thank my guests so much. Daniel Grossman, emergency medicine physician at the Mayo Clinic, and KFF Health News Chief Washington Correspondent Julie Rovner. Thanks so much to both of you.
Been great. Thanks.
And don't forget, The Middle is available as a podcast in partnership with iHeart Podcasts on the iHeart app or wherever you listen to podcasts. And coming to your feed next week, an episode on our weekly podcast extra, One Thing Trump Did, featuring the former Attorney General of the United States, Alberto Gonzales, talking about Trump's targeting of law firms. And next week, we'll be right back here, going to be asking what can be done to improve legal immigration to this country.
Oh, as always, you can call in at 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. You can also reach out to listentothemiddle.com, where you can sign up for our free weekly newsletter and find the sexiest Middle t-shirts and mugs.
The sexiest ones. The Middle is brought to you by Long Neck Media, distributed by Illinois Public Media in Urbana, Illinois, and produced by Harrison Patino, Danny Alexander, Sam Burmis, Dawes, John Barth, Annika Deschler, and Brandon Kondritz. Our technical director is Jason Croft. Thanks to our satellite radio listeners, our podcast audience, and the 430 public radio stations, making it possible for people across the country to listen to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson, and I will talk to you next week.
Over the last couple years, Didn't we learn that the folding chair was invented by Black people because of what happened in Alabama?
The Montgomery Brawl.
This Black History Month, the podcast Selective Ignorance with Mandy B unpacks Black history and culture with comedy, clarity, and conversations that shake the status quo. The Crown Act in New York was signed in July of 2019, and that is a bill that was passed to prohibit discrimination based on hairstyles associated with race. To hear this and more, listen to Selective Ignorance with Mandy B from the Black Effect Podcast Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
1969. Malcolm and Martin are gone. America is in crisis. And at Morehouse College, the students make their move.
These students, including a young Samuel L. Jackson, locked up the members of the Board of Trustees, including Martin Luther King Sr. It's the true story of protest and rebellion in Black American history that you'll never forget. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
14 years in prison for killing a young woman. A 15-year sentence for a crash that caused 3 deaths. 12 and a half years for killing a child and critically injuring her mother. All true stories, all caused by marijuana-impaired drivers. No matter what you tell yourself, if you feel different, you drive different. So, if you're high, just don't drive. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Saturday, May 2nd, country's biggest stars will be in Austin, Texas at our 2026 iHeart Country Festival presented by Capital One. Tickets are on sale now. Get yours before they sell out at Ticketmaster.com. That's Ticketmaster.com.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.